This is a stop sign, and according to every single traffic law in the United States, you must stop for it.
Is this actually the case? Are most drivers good-for-nothing criminals? Let's find out. I'm testing my hypothesis on two intersections that I've had the displeasure of using as a driver and as a pedestrian.
Bartholomew Road and Brett Road on Bush campus, and College Farm Road West and Dudley Road on Cook campus.
Both intersections are four-way stops. However, most of the time, these intersections are free-for-all. To test how often drivers stop at these intersections, I did two observations, one during a class break in the afternoon and one during a class break in the evening.
And during those times, I measured how many people stopped, how many people slightly tapped on the pedal, as in just tapped on the brake pedal and kept going, and the people who just completely ignored the stop sign and ran through the intersection. Now, how many people actually stopped? That's the question we're going to figure out.
After collecting a lot of data, I found that both intersections had a significant amount of noncompliance, with more than 50% of the drivers observed on both campuses ignoring the stop signs. Now, of the over 50% of the drivers that didn't stop, there is still variation in the severity of their mischief. For example, Cook drivers ignored the stop signs at a much higher rate compared to Bush drivers. In fact, 74% of the drivers on Cook failed to stop. Interestingly, during the same time period, Bush drivers seemed to fully stop and slightly stop at almost the exact same rate. That doesn't absolve them of sin though, as 64% of those drivers failed to stop. How about at night? At night, failure to stop rates were about the same as during the daytime. In fact, not only were failure to stop rates about the same, there was also an increase in rolling stops. That means that drivers saw the stop sign with their headlights, yet chose to commit a rolling stop anyways.
So why don't people stop? Well, it could be because of a lack of visibility or improper installation of stop signs, but that doesn't make sense, since drivers also ignored the stop signs that were in plain sight. It could be a lack of care and enforcement. As an example, the Rutgers bus drivers are being recorded while they drive, and if they don't stop for stop signs, they're fired. If a regular driver blows a stop sign, no one is going to fire them. Or, and this is the one that I didn't think about, the oversaturation of stop signs has made them as valuable as a Zimbabwean dollar. How could that be the case? Well, in Huntington, West Virginia, the city kept getting requests for stop signs, a majority of which were unwarranted. So in order to set the record straight about warranted stop signs, they decided to write up a memo with 4 reasons why overusing stop signs degrades their value. Here's what they found. 1. If stop signs are less than 200 feet away from each other, drivers are more likely to speed up rather than slow down, which completely defeats the purpose of installing stop signs to control vehicle speeds. 2. If stop signs are placed at an intersection between a busy street and an extremely low traffic street, drivers on the busy street will ignore the stop signs because they know that there's a very low chance that they'll actually have to stop for traffic from the minor street, which leads to 3. Because drivers get used to running stop signs that protect minor streets, when vulnerable pedestrians, like young children, try to cross the street, drivers on the major street will fail to stop for them, even though the kids have been taught that drivers are supposed to stop for them. We see this with school buses all the time. And 4th, while stop signs are easy to put up, they're expensive to enforce. Police officers aren't free. As a result, since drivers know that stop signs are seldom enforced, it's easy to ignore them due to a lack of enforcement. Now that we know that a lot of drivers choose to ignore stop signs due to a lack of care and enforcement, how can we fix this? To bring more attention to the stop signs, Rutgers could install flashing stop sign beacons, like this one next to Bush Student Center. This makes it painfully obvious to drivers that they need to stop. They could install streetlights that daylight the crosswalks or flashing pedestrian beacons, as seen here at the Rutgers Business School. Or, and this is my preferred solution, Rutgers could get rid of the stop signs and install roundabouts at these intersections. Roundabouts make people slow down, which makes them more aware of their surroundings. Rutgers already has 2 successful roundabouts on campus, one on Douglas and one on Livingston. Let's take a look at them. Hold on, is that a slip lane? Obviously, I did not add that to my final design, as slip lanes encourage drivers to accelerate.
The goal of my roundabouts is to slow drivers down, which seems to be the secondary, not the primary, goal of this roundabout. How about the Livingston roundabout? That's more like it. Obviously, Rutgers had a much larger space to work with compared to my roundabouts, but this roundabout still demonstrates how effective roundabouts are at slowing drivers down. Now, for both of my roundabouts, I decided to not embrace the idea that a bigger roundabout is better than a smaller one. In fact, I'd argue that smaller roundabouts are more effective because there's less room for error, which makes drivers slow down. Oxon Hill, Maryland has embraced this mentality and has peppered one of their main roads, Oxon Hill Road, with roundabouts, even if their placements are a little questionable. This has had the effect of slowing drivers down as they transition from the Tanger Outlets mall area into the residential area that is adjacent to the mall. Stop signs are an important part of pedestrian safety, but it seems like they're constantly ignored by apathetic drivers who see stop signs as a roadblock to getting to their destination quickly. If the people in charge of the roads in our communities don't enforce stop signs or find other ways to slow people down, they risk cultivating a culture that allows drivers to get away with breaking traffic laws at the expense of pedestrians, who are not protected by a metal box. Having seen what is happening at Rutgers with students failing to stop at stop signs, I believe that Rutgers has a responsibility to instill good driving habits into their students in a state that is known for the recklessness of its drivers. By enforcing good driving skills around pedestrians through engineering, education, and enforcement, Rutgers can ensure that the next generation of drivers is more respectful of people outside of a metal box.